Welcome to the Crazy Cool Family Podcast with Don and Suzanne Manning.
A podcast where we share with you great insights about everything family from over 30 years of parenting 7 kids and over a decade of equipping parents through our Crazy Cool Family ministry.
So let us inspire and equip you to build your best family. Thank you for listening to our podcast. We value you and your opinion. And if you like what you are hearing, leave us a review. 5 stars preferably. It takes about 20 seconds, but it's one way that you can help us reach more families. Thanks for loving us and Crazy Cool Family. We love you.
All right, welcome to the Crazy Cool Family Podcast. Don here today with a guy who's become a friend of mine, wouldn't you say, Carl? Over the last,
Absolutely.
we've had many discussions, and Carl started an organization called the San Antionio Marriage Initiative. I'm going to let him tell you about it. We're going to talk about it a lot on the back end of the podcast, but and basically that led to the Marriage Initiative. It's marriageinitiative.org,
Mm-hmm.
and so
Yes.
Basically just a cool deal that he started in San Antonio and said, I want San Antonio to be the most marriage-rich town in the country. And so he networked and put a lot of people together, as we'll talk about. And then that spread to other cities now with the Marriage Initiative to spread marriage help to Christian and non-Christian parents all over the country. Right, Carl?
Right. Well, thanks for having me, Don. It's fun to be with you. And yes, you're a good friend in this mission together.
And did I explain it well? Give us a little bit I probably didn't do an awesome job. You do it better than I do, but give us a little rundown of the Marriage Initiative and how it relates to the San Antonio Marriage Initiative.
Yeah. So Kelly and I began just coming alongside couples in the 1980s, and I was involved with advocating for marriage in the 90s. But one of the things that I found was missing was community, is how you bring a community together to serve families or marriages. And so in 2009, I just made a really simple commitment. I just made the commitment to have 2 coffee meetings a week with people in San Antonio just to hear about what they were doing to serve marriages. And little did I know that I would end up meeting 300 people and organizations that care deeply about marriage in that first 3 years. Since then, I've met with over 1,000 people. And what we found was something that makes a lot of sense now that you think about it, is that God is already about the business of redeeming and restoring marriage. In fact, we believe God desires to redeem and restore marriage in cities all across the country by his power and for his glory. And he's doing that. And what we found was there was just this incredible emerging movement of people who wanted to work together, who wanted to know each other, wanted to help each other, wanted just to be in relationship with one another. And through those connections, we built the most marriage resource city in the country. Where in this one little city, we have over 200 events per year that are serving marriages. And just with Reengage, which is a great resource, there's over 300 nights of the year that couples can find help and hope in our city. So little did we know God was moving in a great way.
And you were a businessman, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Before all this.
Yeah. In the early 80s, I started in the real estate business and was a home builder for a lot of years. But I was slowly becoming bivocational. That was one of my callings. One of my mentors encouraged me to consider becoming bivocational, and real estate helps you do that.
So I totally agree. That's where I came from as well. And one of the things I just learned from that, 2 coffee meetings a week led to where it is now. So if you go to there and that, it's just amazing what God can do with 2 coffee meetings a week and just some consistent, meetings, just small steps lead to big things so many times. And we're going to hear some really cool stuff about just the marriage movement in general. Parents, you're going to be super encouraged at the back end of this podcast as we talk about where God's moving in marriages across the country and the fight that's happening. But man, always we want to give you something practical. And I love Carl is just you know, he sees a lot about marriage. He won't call himself a marriage expert. I will, but he just, he just sees so much about marriage in general. And so this podcast is going to air, end of this year, early next year, 2025. Something we haven't put it on the schedule yet of exactly when it's going to happen. But what would you say to a couple that's been married, let's say 10 years, 10 to 20 years, somewhere in that ballpark? A lot of our families have, already have kids and they've already been through that first season of marriage. So they're in that second, maybe, third season of marriage. They're going into 2025. Help them with one, some insight into marriage, but also like, what would you tell them to do to improve their marriage in 2025?
I would say two words: be intentional.
Mm.
Be intentional. Marriage, people talk about, marriage can be hard, and it can be. People, have a lot of things to say about struggling in marriage, but what I have found and what I personally experienced is that if you'll simply be intentional about your marriage can thrive. Your marriage can become something that is beyond what you would ever dream it could be. It can be, as Tim Keller says, outside of a relationship with God, marriage is the most profound relationship there is. Let's pause right there. It can be. That's what God intends for it to be. Marriage
It can
is
either
our
be
most,
profound in a positive way or in a negative way, right? As you see
well,
with,
it is, but marriage is the most unique tool of discipleship.
right.
You can have friends and you can interact with friends and have good friendships with them, but you don't live with a friend day and night. You don't snore on the other side of the bed with a friend. You don't have annoying habits, that your friends don't see. Marriage is the most unique place where God can disciple us, where we are refined by the unique challenges that is inside of the marriage relationship. And so, if you'll just simply be intentional about how you are living out that journey of discipleship, God can do marvelous things through that. And one of the things it can be so simple. One of the things that we say or suggest to couples is we say connect daily, date weekly, and get away regularly. Three simple, intentional things. Connect daily. Just find time each day. You don't have to formalize this. Just find a time each day just to connect with a couple and catch up on your day and find a time just to talk about how things have been going. Just connect daily. And then date weekly. Find something you do each week where it's a ritual or tradition for you, where you do something together as a couple to be intentional, right? I'll tell you what Kelly and I do when our kids were little, and now our kids are grown and we have 5 grandkids. But when our kids were little, we every Friday night we got pizza and we had family fun night. We spread out a little picnic blanket on the carpet in the living room, and we watched a movie or something like that. We had family fun night, and that was a time to date weekly. And last night we have our little 3-year-old grandson with us, and now 34 years later, every Friday night we still get pizza and we
Wow.
still watch a movie together. Kelly and I do that every single week. That we're
And the last one was get away when?
get away regularly.
Regularly. I couldn't remember that
Yeah,
word.
yeah. So find a place where you like to get away to, where you can have more one-on-one time together. And so it's different for different people. For Kelly and I, we love to hike. And so every year we go to the Canadian Rockies. We just got back from Banff National Park. We hiked 117 miles in 10 days, and it's amazing. That's how we really connect, is through activity. And it's amazing the conversations that we'll have out in the middle of a national forest, just hiking, side by side together. So that's our preferred way to get away. But a lot of people like to go to the beach. Some people like to go on a cruise. There's a lot of different ways to do this. Some people, I've heard, people will rent a real unique Airbnb someplace and go do that, but get away regularly. And during that time, make a lot of time just to connect as a couple. Talk about the things that you don't ordinarily have time to talk about. Over 117 miles in 9 days. We had a lot of time to
Yeah.
talk about things that we might not ordinarily talk about.
Yeah. And that's good. And then you said, that's awesome, actually. The connect daily, date weekly, get away regularly, and really finding the unique, you know, that everybody doesn't have to go hike 117 miles in 9 days. It's like it could be an antique show, or it could be,
Right.
so whatever it is that interest, and even, I was just thinking about, like, I like to hike. Suzanne likes to go to the beach. How could we incorporate both of the, maybe we trade off because we might have some differences, and, or, what does that look like for us? So that's really good. When you look at you also mentioned before we were talking about the three C's of marriage, that you tell us about that a little bit.
Well, marriage is such an extraordinary relationship. Like my Tim Keller quote, it's the most profound earthly relationship. And there's three things that I think marriage so very unique and so different than any other of our relationships. And I call those the three C's, and that is companionship, connection, and commitment. And let me just unpack each one. Com- Companionship is amazing in marriage. I say that marriage is extraordinary in the ordinary. It's just those daily rhythms of how you connect as a couple, the companionship that you have with a couple, which is so unusual. Uh, Daily companionship means you get up in the morning, you might have coffee together, you talk about your day, then you go maybe different ways during the day, but then you come back together and you share the special moments of your day. You pray together. Marriage is the most unique form of companionship that we have with another person. Marriage is also the most profound way we connect, and we connect in many different ways. We connect emotionally, right? We connect physically. We connect spiritually. Emotionally, we connect in such a unique way, in that we share the journey of a life together with another couple. Physical intimacy, the sexual relationship, is so profoundly powerful, has so much potential, even though there's so much pain often in physical intimacy. That there is no more profound way that you connect with another person through that physical relationship. And then the spiritual connection that you have as you're growing toward Christ together. It's the most unique form of connection we have with another human being. And then finally it's the commitment. Marriage is the most significant commitment you make to another person. And Dr. Scott Stanley from University of Denver has done so much research on commitment and the unique elements it brings to a relationship. And so the three C's are what I feel like what really set marriage apart as our most unique earthly relationship.
Yeah, and I love the idea that marriage is a profound relationship. And so, but you also mentioned the pain. Pain can be physical, it can be emotional, it can
Hmm.
be mental as well. I mean, there's a lot of, and so it's profound in a way that it really can be profoundly have a profound negative impact on us, but it can also move to a positive.
Hmm.
As you look at these three C's and the things about being intentional, I'm sure you've seen story after story of marriages that were struggling, that did some different things and then were redeemed, right?
We see there are thousands of examples around us where that is happening, and you see that mostly through what's called marriage intensives. And people that have not heard of marriage intensives, for couples that the Gottman research says that couples who enter counseling generally have been in distress for 6 years. And what that means is that couples generally wait way too long to reach out for help. And a lot of times couples don't make progress with counseling because what they don't realize is that they're way too far down the road in the intensity of their personal struggle. And so what's
So
really
in other
more,
words, the marriage is too broken at that point. The marriage, but not too broken,
yeah,
but it becomes so broken that it becomes more difficult to fix.
you're not going to fix it with a 45-minute counseling session once a week. Because if you get to your counselor and you're really struggling in your marriage, 45 minutes, you can hardly even unpack what's beginning to happen in what's happening in your marriage. And then you have 7 days of 24 hours a day to get where you kind of fall back and regress, and you don't make enough progress. You need a more intensive intervention. And that's what we call marriage intensives. Marriage intensives are where you get away for a period of days, usually 2 to 3 days, sometimes 5 days, but usually about 3 days. And you go through an intensive, usually group format of where you come together with other couples and you're guided as a facilitator by a counselor or a therapist. And you walk through what's really happening in your marriage and you unpack that and you make a lot of progress. You make a lot of progress. That's why couples are so happy when they emerge from a marriage intensive. Very often in marriage intensives, couples have already filed for divorce. They've already decided they're not going to stay in the relationship. And 70 to 90% of those couples reconcile. People find that hard to believe.
Mm.
Well, it's because you've gotten a lot of help for your marriage and you've created a lot of growth. And one of the dynamics of a marriage intensive is that you're not there for your partner to get fixed. You're there to grow yourself as a person. And so one of the things that we see is that thousands of couples go through these marriage intensive. One of the most long-standing intensives is done by Focus on the Family. It's called Hope Restored, and they've helped 11,000 couples walk through an intensive experience. And their research indicates that well north of 80% of those couples reconcile. Again, these are some of the most troubled marriages that are struggling deeply. And yet, if you get an intense amount of help in a short period of time, it's amazing what God can do through that.
But you would recommend, what I'm hearing is you would recommend that a couple that's not in the ditch, so to speak, would do a marriage intensive, like, and that you would recommend a marriage intensive for a fairly healthy couple that's, needing just to go deeper into moving that needle towards excellence in the marriage relationship.
Well, you can, any couple will benefit from going through a marriage intensive. If you're just an ordinary couple with just the ordinary challenges, you know, join a re-engage group, go to a Retrovi event, get involved with Marriage Encounter, reach out and be intentional about your marriage. Read a book together and
Mhm.
talk about it. We've interviewed a lot of people lately that do marriage devotional books. Just buy a devotional book. They're for couples that you just read a devotion each day and you talk about it. It's amazing how much progress you can make if you just do something. Now, if you don't do anything for your marriage, just like if you never change the oil in your car, if you never go to the dentist, if you never get a physical with your general practitioner, your engine's going to go out.
Right.
Your life might end. Your heart might quit beating. And Don, that's what one of the most unique things that happened during COVID was that one of the things we heard more than anything during COVID was this. It would be a typical couple might say, we've been married for 15 years. We've never done anything, nothing. We've never done anything to learn how to communicate. We've never done anything to learn how to handle conflict. And now all of a sudden, all we're doing is trying to communicate about conflict. And
Yeah.
COVID was an enormous watershed moment for marriage. COVID changed a generation of people of how we thought about marriage because for the first time ever, they realized they needed to invest a little bit of energy. And it's just amazing. If you'll just invest a tiny bit of energy and intentionality in your marriage, how much difference can that make? There's some incredible research about marriage preparations. Okay, so for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, 80 years, 90 years, 100 years, 200 years, 300 years, 400 years, 500 years, 600 years, 700 years, 800 years, 900 years, 1000 years, 2000 years, 3000 years, 4000 years, 5000 years, 6000 years, 7000 years, 8000 years, 9000 years, 100 years, 200 years, 300 years, 400 years, 500 years, 600 years, 700 years, 800 years, 900 years, 1000 years, 2000 years, 3000 years, 4000 years, 5000 years, 6000 years, 7000 years, 8000 years, 9000 years, 100 years, 200 years, 300 years, 400 years, 500 years, 600 years, 7 couples that are dating and get engaged. What's so interesting of couples who are engaged, if they will get 8 hours of marriage preparation, the research says that their marital satisfaction over a lifetime will increase by 30%. Now, think
Wow.
about that.
Yeah.
8 hours, that's about the time you spend watching three different football games. If you spend 8 hours of marriage preparation, your marital satisfaction rate increases by 30% over your lifetime. Now, people don't even believe that, but if we unpack what marriage preparation does and the dynamics of what it is, then it begins to make sense. My point is, be intentional about your marriage. Do something to grow in your skill and ability to love and serve each other.
Yeah, and I love what you said too. And Suzanne and I experienced, my wife Suzanne and I experienced this with you said that, man, all we do is talk about conflict when the marriage is struggling, you know. And Suzanne and I went through that several years ago. Our marriage was good, but we started to unpack some things. We started to be intentional, as you're saying, about pursuing each other more with 7 kids. It was just, you know, we had kind of put each other a little bit on the back burner, so to speak. And at first, when we started to try to reconcile things and improve our marriage, it's like, my goodness, all we're talking about is how we have conflict. But that was healthy because we had to unpack those things. But today, and sometimes it does them, you know, a few years later, you know, we looked up maybe a couple of years ago and we said, hey, we don't talk about conflict as much anymore. And because we had processed through some things, we'd become safer with each other. And you know, just last night we were talking about how we resolve conflict, but it's in a different level. It's in a different
Mhm.
light. And so I just, you know, what I want to come out of, you know, you just said, you know, so many different resources. And what I'd love to do, and I'll email you, Carl, just to get, maybe, and we'll go back through the podcast itself and write down some of those to put in the show notes, just some suggestions of things that parents can do. But I love also talking to you about just the marriage movement in general. So, you know, and where, again, we want to always encourage parents. We always want to encourage marriages. We want to encourage them to work on their own marriage, but also have hope for marriages around the country and the state of marriage in our country. Tell us about where you think that is and what you guys are doing right now.
Well, as I mentioned before, there's recently been a generational shift, and COVID was what brought that about. COVID stopped our lives, and it shook us in a lot of ways, and it woke us up to our most important priorities. And that was one of the elements of research that came out of COVID, is that what COVID did as a generational shift is it caused us to rethink what's most important to us. And for most people, one of the things that they realized is they wanted to invest more in their closest personal relationships, particularly their marriage and their family and their closest friends. And so it was a wonderful but painful cultural
Right.
moment where we began to reassess our priorities. And what happened through that was that as a generation, we had fought over the definition of marriage. You know, that was the gay marriage culture war debate. And then we had fought over a number of different elements of marriage culturally. But what's begun to emerge is a new sense of appreciation and value for marriage. And there's some odd things that are happening. You know, young people are much more concerned about making marriage work, and that's kind of what's behind cohabitation. And even
Really?
though
So you feel like, I mean, because in my world, as people talk about marriage, it's like nobody cares about marriage. I mean, like everybody's living together. So you're seeing a different trend as you look. I know you study this a lot more than I do. Yeah, tell us about that a little bit.
well, culturally, it depends on where you're getting your news. But if you're reading the New York Times, you would decide that marriage was a dying institution. Not at all. Marriage is actually the importance and value of marriage is rising among many demographics. For instance, Indian Americans, Hispanic Americans, Black Americans, every year when they're surveyed, they have a higher and higher value on marriage. And you have to understand culture much more deeply. There's two gigantic cultural things that are happening in the United States. One is the cultural shift towards expressive individualism. Expressive individualism is an enormous cultural element that's held mostly by affluent whites, is that expressive individualism, which means I'm all about me and my personal happiness and personal satisfaction. Okay. Now, that is expressive individualism is the worldview held by most people that write articles for the New York Times, I believe, essentially by what I read about, what they say. Certainly in the media, that's what you see in popular entertainment. That's what you see is expressive individualism. The opposite of expressive individualism is what's called mutualism or collectivism. And what that means is you don't think so much about your personal happiness. You think about the collective happiness of the people that are most important to you. The Hispanic culture is deeply rooted in collectivism or mutualism, which means family is the most important part of their life. As they say, familia es todo. It means family is everything.
Right.
And marriage is actually rising, not falling. It's rising among many parts of the demographics around the United States. Now, you don't hear that because most of what you read in the popular media is written by affluent whites, okay, and the elites of the media. But what's really happening across America is marriage is rising again. And we're excited about the possibilities of that.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And so how does San Antonio Marriage Initiative and Marriage Initiative in general, tell us about that and how people can encourage that, connect with it, things like that.
Well, so we serve dynamic marriage leaders, people like you. We serve dynamic marriage leaders and help them work together towards ambitious goals. That's our tagline. And so we serve people in the content space. That's people like you and your lovely wife who are creating content for marriage and families. But we also serve people in the community space. We serve teams in 30 cities where teams of leaders want to change the dynamic of marriage in their community. We also serve church leaders. Those are the people on the front lines of serving marriages. And finally, we serve civic leaders. If you are a public policy person or if you serve in a legislature and you want to create a better framework for families in your state, we serve leaders in that way. We also steward through a role of stewardship. We steward two really important tools for the marriage movement, and that is National Marriage Week, which happens every year between February 7th and 14th. That's one tool, and the other tool is the Marriage Resource Center. The Marriage Resource Center is the largest online website where you can find information about hundreds of people who've written books and resources for marriage. And it's geared mostly for church leaders, but couples themselves can go to the Marriage Resource Center and find just a wealth of help and hope for their marriage. And so we serve this emerging movement of leaders. And one of the things that we learned really early just here in San Antonio was that it was going to take more than one particular program to really move the needle on marriage. Because let's just take San Antonio itself. There's 400,000 marriages in San Antonio. That's a lot of marriages.
That's a lot.
Research indicates that 20% of those marriages are struggling. That means in our little bitty city of San Antonio, we have 80,000 struggling marriages. 9,000 couples will file for divorce this year. The taxpayer cost of divorce is $38,000 per family. That means we have a $300 million a year problem in our city. Okay. So you're never going to be able to serve 80,000 struggling couples with just one resource or one little ministry that's helping 12 couples a month. You're never going to be able to serve problems of that size. It's going to take a movement. It's going to take God's people coming together to to help each other and to unite this emerging marriage movement in a city. And so that's what when we say we serve teams in 30 cities, in these 30 cities, there are teams of people who think about the geography of their own city, who understand that the magnitude of the problem in their city, and they're mobilizing thousands, sometimes hundreds of people across their city to really reach the marriages in that space. So that's what it looks like at a community level. But at a national level, there's 61 million marriages. So we need to be coming together as the body of Christ, helping and serving one another. One of the things that we say about our process, we say, well, everyone's need is met by the strength of another. If you're an author and you've written an amazing book for marriage and your need is to get the word out, then you need the strength of others. You need church leaders who will help you get the word out. You need community leaders who will help get the word out. You need civic leaders who will help your resource spread. So everyone's need is met by the strength of another. That's how a kingdom movement advances.
Man, that's awesome. And so, as we kind of land the plane here a little bit, I know where what you've talked about, the National Marriage Week, that's on, there's basically two websites you guys have, San Antonio Marriage Initiative and Marriage Initiative itself, right? And then where is the Marriage Resource Center? Is that another website, or how does that work?
Well, we try to keep everything really simple. So we have a whole lot of different websites, but National Marriage Week is at marriageweek.org, marriageweek.org.
Yep.
And at that website, you'll find all sorts of resources. We have a great resource called a Couple Connection Guide. It's just a real simple resource that a couple can download for free. It's a PDF. You can download it and walk through it together as a couple. We always suggest this at the beginning of the year to kind of be intentional about your marriage for the year ahead. It's a great free resource that you can use. But also the Marriage Resource Center is another real simple website, marriageresources.org.
Oh, there you go.
And
okay.
And so everything is really simple. Marriageinitiative.org, samarriage.org, marriageweek.org, and marriageresources.org.
That's awesome. So we'll put all this in the show notes as well. But I wanted to make sure that, that's where he's talking about the largest group of resources. It's just so much there. So, Carl, well, first of all, just thank you for your work in marriages. This is, I'm always encouraged. I'm a businessman too. We're in the family ministry space. You guys are in the marriage ministry space we all work together to try to, one of the things that I found as I moved from business into ministry is how so many ministries are siloed. And so I love what you're doing to try to make ministries come together, not just ministries, but civic, people. There's so many people that care about marriage and want marriages to be done well. So we'll put these websites in the show notes, and just really appreciate you coming on. Highly encourage those people that have a passion for marriage. This is a place for you to join in and connect with people who also have a passion for marriage. So, Carl, again, thank you. And great time. And I hope for all the marriages out there that 2025 will be a time of improvement. It will be a time of inspiration, and that you will, going back to what he said at first, that you will make a point to be intentional about your marriage in 2025. So as always, parents, go be crazy. crazycoolfamily.com.